but a community is by definition a group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common. Bobo lives among people with whom he shares much in common. I put it to you that St. Mary of the Angels is a community in its own right, with a proven track record of success spanning 6 decades. It is a residential care model that should be researched and replicated, not broken up and sold to fund community living. In closing, I ask the committee to support my request that St. Mary of the Angels be immediately exempted from the time to move on policy, which should never have targeted it in the first place, let alone designated it a pilot and priority site for decongregation. Thank you very much.
Today. And I want to dedicate my contribution to Jennifer Hines, and some of you know her as a stalwart, amazing self-advocate who finds herself in a nursing home since 2019, and also to the Clear Leader Forum, who is a pan-disabled people's organisation who believe in the right to live a life with dignity, privacy, equality, respect and autonomy, driven by the mottos, rights, not charity, and nothing about us without us.
The dignity and rights of the individuals affected is at the heart of this for me, and I think for us as a committee. We know our systems still have a kind of paternalistic attitude, viewing people with intellectual disabilities as requiring care rather than enabling them to live as independently as possible and appropriate. At present, we know choices are limited to either congregation settings, which we're trying to move away from, or dependency on family care, which we know presents its own challenges with an ageing population and the disgraceful way in which carers are treated. We need to replace this with a one-size-fits-all model with a focus on one thing, and that's individual rights. The slow progress of the HSE's time to move on from congregated settings strategy is symptomatic of this perspective. Since the strategy commenced, of the initial 4,000 people identified, only 661 people have been supported to transition. And as Professor McConkie said, at this rate, it'll be another 20 years before decongregation is complete.
It is a very important topic that we are discussing here today. Deinstitutionalisation has been on the political agenda for at least 3 successive governments now, with the HSE's Time to Move On strategy from 2012. And on the other hand, we have a strong social and historical culture of institutionalisation.
The Deputy raises a very important point about how do we manage the transfers of people from congregated living and preventing other people going into those sorts of settings. We have a lot of international experience of how to do this and how it can be done well. It does require what's called bridging funding. So in addition to keeping your ongoing costs of service provision, you need additional monies to help you develop the new styles of services. And there's also the capital realisation. The National Health Service in the United Kingdom has found this was a very lucrative source of funding because they were able to sell off the capital, the large campus arrangements, often recreated as housing developments in particular areas.
I was very blown away by Lynn Fitzpatrick's and her beautiful brother and it was just wonderful to hear such a positive story. But how do we make that choice? How do we allow, or not allow? How do we provide that choice for everybody, where Bobo is safe? He is in the community, as Lynn says, and is happy. But then, as Anne-Marie very much said, the lack of choice, the lack of personal assistance. There's so much work to be done, and I suppose I kind of want an umbrella your thoughts on that, because you're at the front of it, and I. Thank you all, because it was very engaging. Thank you.
Okay. Lynn, do you want to come in?
Hi, yeah, I will come in there. Thanks very much, Senator, and thanks for acknowledging me as well, being here for Bernard. There's a couple of things I just would like to say. Well, first of all, to answer, I suppose, your question there of how can we kind of look after everyone. That's what I advocate for. I advocate that there should be a full range of choice to suit every individual person. I am not trying to remove rights from anyone. I struggle with the fact that there were 1,200 people or so in a nursing home, young people with disabilities, when this policy started, and they were identified then back in 2007. And the thing was, they're outside the scope. Like, my brother is so happy where he is, and yet he was prioritised to be moved out ahead of these people who may want to go, some of them. And so I think there should be a full range of options. And I read a thematic study on the UN Convention, and it says that equal basis means the right to accept or reject all kinds of living situations, all kinds of care, including institutional care. I don't consider that what my brother has. But the reality is, the people I'm here for today, and I wish if there was a way I could bring everyone down and you could see them and meet them for yourselves, they have nothing in common. Like, the majority of people with disabilities, of course, independent community living is right for them because they have more in common with regular, ordinary, to use the policy terms, communities than they do with the people that are in St. Mary of the Angels. But the fact is, they exist. Like, in 2019, 23 people were either admitted or readmitted into congregated settings. 82% of them had high or intensive support needs, okay? And as of January 2020, there were 1,953 people remaining in congregated settings. That has since increased because of admissions. 76% of them have a high level of support need, or intensive. So why are we pushing people out of situations into communities that it's well documented, if you listen to the radio, families are saying it every day, they don't have the facilities to help them? And just another thing I just really feel I have to say, because I've listened now and I've given a lot of time listening to everybody, two things that I keep coming up and are said here: nothing about us without us, and paternalism. So I just want to quickly say how the policy has treated Bobo in this regard. So nothing about us without us. The policy, the working group on congregated settings, came together in 2007. The policy was published in 2011 and it was launched as a strategy in 2012. My family and Bobo didn't know about this policy until September 2016. And we found out about the policy because my mother received a phone call from one of the managers in his home out of the clear blue sky in that summer, telling her that his name was on a list for a state-of-the-art house in Milltown. Now, we ended up having to try and dig and find out what was going on and educate ourselves about this policy, which took us time, but nothing about us without us. Bobo's family and all the families in St. Mary of the Angels didn't know about this policy, but that's not actually the point, because you talk about paternalism as well. Bobo, he's here. Bobo can't speak for himself. Unfortunately, he can't. I wish he could. I wish he could be here instead of me. But there are people in St. Mary of the Angels who can, and they have sat in rooms with disability advocates, and they have told them they want to stay where they are. They have said it: I love my home. This is my home. I don't want to move. What's more paternalistic than a national policy that tells them, we know what's best for you. You'll be way better off in the community. And on what planet is Bobo going to be better off having the same access to services and facilities that I have, when he needs hydrotherapy, he needs things that are not available anywhere else? He has a team of specialists around the clock, and the people that I'm talking about today, they have very, very high care needs, and I just wish there was a way I could get that across. And rights and obligation as well, I think we need to be really clear. There's a difference between a right and an obligation. And the Ombudsman, I didn't see the thing last week, but I know the Ombudsman said, we don't know if the people in the nursing homes want to be there or not unless we ask them. And if they want to be there, it's perfectly fine. Well, why is it not perfectly fine? And by the way, there was a reference made to 10 people in a single living unit. There's 63 adults in St. Mary of the Angels. There's 11 houses and chalets. There's no more than 10 people in any single living unit on that campus. And there's 30 acres. There's loads of development. There's loads of people wanting to support it. Like, we've been told we can't develop on it because of this policy. It can't be developed because everyone has to move out. And I feel there's a target on St. Mary of the Angels' back at the moment, because the policy itself says that in order to fund this decongregation thing, they need to sell off these assets, which, by the way, were donated to people like my brother by a local Kerry family and built from the ground up by the people of Kerry. So nobody has a right to sell it. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be so heated, but it's been very, very difficult for me to sit here and listen to some of what's been said today, because how can you claim to be an advocate and care about social justice and then be okay with people being forced, evicted cruelly out of their homes? And I have the evidence and I can share it. I can send it afterwards. of what has happened internationally in Australia and America when the same line of thought was followed. The data is there. And by the way, just to correct another wrong figure again from earlier, 942 people had been moved out at the start of 2020, not 600 or whatever was said by Deputy Cairns. That's not actually the figure. And 278 have been readmitted. But I'm sorry. Sorry.
Thank you very much. To come back in.
Yeah, I will. I suppose the question I would pose is, I completely understand why St. Mary of the Angels would be really inappropriate for someone like Ms. Flanagan, who could be here today and articulate so well and speak so well and impressively, and I commend her for the work she does. But can we not just open our minds a little bit to see that the disability umbrella is absolutely huge, and that my brother and people like him in St. Mary of the Angels are in the tiny, tiny minority? And is there not a danger that we are, in trying to look after what's right for the majority, that we are imposing something on the minority that is not right for them? And I know Ms. Flanagan said as well that she disagrees, and that's fair enough, it's her opinion. There should be no congregated settings, and I don't think I'd be here today if so many disability advocates didn't share that exact view. But I did my best. I spent I don't know how many hours trying to write that speech to try and paint a picture without pictures of what Bernard's life is like and what that place is like. And can you honestly tell me that that is an institution, or that it is inappropriate? Does it sound inappropriate? Does the fact that people with very, very fragile health are doing so well there and thriving and happy and not relying on medication or anything? I know somebody there who tried community living. They tried it loads of different times. It didn't work for them. Their life was saved by coming into St. Mary of the Angels. These things can be true as well. I'm not trying to take anything away from the majority of people with disabilities, but it appears that they are trying to take something away from us. And no, it's not because I'm afraid of communities or all these things that have been said about me. It's not because we're all institutionalised, we don't know any better. I know what's in the community. I know what's in his community. And I just plead, if you could even come down to St. Mary of the Angels and see it with your own eyes and meet the people, because I wish, like, they are all behind me today. They're families, you can't see them, but they're watching and they're here and they're counting on me. And this is a very, very difficult battle for us. And I know Ms. Flanagan mentioned how exhausting it is. I can tell you how exhausting it has been for my family and all the families trying to fight this policy on our own, which so clearly to me violates so many aspects of the UN Convention. That's a topic for today. So I just plead with everyone to just step back and just please try to take another look. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now go to Pauline Tully. Pauline.
Thank you, Chair. And I would like to thank all the witnesses here today. I think it's been a very engaging meeting. With lots of different viewpoints being put forward, and have certainly given me lots of food for thought. I want to particularly commend Lynn Fitzpatrick. I think you've given a very good account of, representing your brother and other people like him. And I do think you've made us think and rethink perhaps that maybe congregated settings are not all bad, and maybe they need to be assessed individually. I think it's down to choice and what's best for the individual, and that's what's extremely important. That there are different home circumstances which suit different people, and that's what needs to be taken into account. And I mean, if all individuals were treated with respect and allow that choice, that's what's most important.
Lynn, do you want to come in before we wrap up on any comments, Lynn?
I suppose, I totally acknowledge, look, I'm the same as everyone else here. Our collective Irish psyche is damaged from years of institutional abuse, and it's horrific. As I said at the beginning, my brother has never lived in an institution, and it's very wrong that his home and his community and a model of care that has been so appropriate for some who actually do need care, like it or not, they can't feed themselves, they can't do anything for themselves, a lot of them. That's the reality. And I think, look, there's also been desperate abuse. We all heard about the Grace case. When I asked the question, when we first found out about the policy, what would families do who for one reason or another literally could not keep their child at home if they closed all the congregated settings? Where would that child go? The answer that came was into the foster system. Now, if everybody is comfortable with that, great, but I'm definitely not. Abuse can happen anywhere. And if you go to our Save St. Mary of the Angels website and look at our international page, look at the litany of failures in the group home community community living model in America and in Australia. Look what happened to people when they were moved out. Because I commend Ms. Flanagan. I think she's an absolutely amazing advocate for people, for the majority of people with disabilities. But unfortunately, and sometimes I feel like this policy thinks people like my brother are going to go extinct. They're not. There's no proper advocacy in Ireland for people like my brother. There just isn't. We are trying. I'm not an advocate. I'm not an activist. I am doing my best here today to fight for these people because nobody else who should be, who is funded by the state to do so, appears to be doing so. So I really, really hope, just please take stock of what I said. And I also, just in relation to the support thing, like the people in St Mary the Angels are supported. They're supported to enjoy the community. They're always out and about. Like when I was a few months ago with my dad presenting to the Minister for Disabilities and Rabbit and some HSE people, I thought it was so funny afterwards when Mum told me that while me and Dad were totally stressed trying to present at this yet another meeting, Bernard was in Muckra's House and Gardens having tea and cake, and I'm delighted he was, and I'm delighted that Bernard does not know, and I hope to God he doesn't know, that this is going on and that people have decided that he doesn't live in the right kind of community and he has no business being there and be better off out away from all the essential services he's had for 40 years, as if that hasn't actually cost lives. And I did read in a HSE report as well, because I know Professor McConkie said about that there's evidence that people don't live as long. I read in the HSE progress report about the time to move on that people in congregated settings live equally as long as their counterparts in the community. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Professor Gullett, do you want to make final remarks?
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to echo a couple of things Deputy Tully said. It's not just about housing, and I don't think it's enough just to provide housing. It needs to be real meaningful inclusion. There needs to be support with employment, vocation, physical and mental health care. And the second thing Deputy Tully said was about the right to choice, and I think that's really important, echoing what Ms. Lynn Fitzpatrick has also said.
Thank you very much to our members. Thank you for and also thank Pauline for taking the earlier part of the meeting. I really appreciate it. I would like to thank our witnesses that came before us today for an extremely thought-provoking discussion. You know, we've listened to the language of decongregation, we have listened to the language of institutionalisation, but we've also listened very carefully to Lynn Fitzpatrick's very personal testimony. And, you know, I think that at every stage in our history, if we had that kind of challenge to our thinking, and if we had the challenge to the policies that were prescribed over the years, you know, we may be a better place in terms of providing for people with disabilities. And everybody has a different story to tell. It's clearly from the evidence that was here today. Everybody has a different story to tell. And we cannot throw, the great phrase of throwing the baby out with the bathwater has to be at all times in how we try to influence policy from our committee. And, you know, that was very powerful personal testimony and fierce courage to come on and to put it out there in the public domain in terms of your brother and in terms of your family. And I know that there is excellent care in St Mary's of the Angels. It's well renowned. I'm not too far from it myself. It's well renowned throughout. But also to challenge what has gone on in institutions and to try and find what is right. We are charged with, you know, the UNCRPD, and to try and make sure that disabilities are to the fore. And all of our committee, I think that it's safe to say in the 9 or 10 months of our existence, we have left our political colours outside and we have worked together to try and ensure that we're doing the right thing for people with disabilities. So your discussion here today has been extremely thought-provoking, and it is certainly is something that we will be reflecting very carefully on how we do it. So to all of you who have been in it, to the advocacies, to the personal testimonies, to the professors that have been on it as well, thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your forthrightness of the information you put before us. And we have no doubt that we will be coming back to you again for further information. So keep up the good work that you're doing in each of your own spheres, and we look forward to working with you. And thanks to our members and indeed to our team for today's meeting. So our meeting now stands adjourned until this day week. We have our next meeting at on the 8th of July at 11:30 a.m. So Gur maith agah, slán.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.